it's been for me a little bit challenging weekend with what's happening in Haiti and Afghanistan. Some of our team is in Pakistan, and so we've been in communication all weekend about what's going on. And Pat Amidian, our co-director, spent many years in Afghanistan, so she's been getting pleas from people asking how can she help them come here to the U.S. So it's so our hearts are, I know all of our hearts are there, and sometimes it's like the elephant in the room, and I don't want to pretend that this isn't happening. But I'm really happy to be with you this morning, and I can use this kind of community support. And I'm extra grateful to Anna, because Anna Willman, who will be facilitating today, is in California, in Oregon, which is 3 hours earlier. So if it feels early for us, just imagine how it might feel if it was 5:15 in the morning. So it's really generous of her to be here. I've known Anna for a long time. She's been a focuser since 1983. And she was director of a confidence clinic, which was a program for women in transition and mostly low-income women. And she actually integrated focusing in the curriculum. And since she's retired, she's published 7 novels. And she's currently on our board of directors, Focusing Initiatives International. And as we always call her, she's the glue that keeps us together. So Anna, I'm just so grateful that you're here this morning. And I believe Lynn and Annette is going to say a few words before we begin.
Well, I also want to echo my gratitude, Anna, for you being here. And this project of writing every Monday morning in August is really exciting and wonderful. And so glad to see you. And it's wonderful to have different writers help us with their perspective and their way of doing it. I also want to welcome Annette, who some of you might know from our Millennial Focusing Group, who will be helping to facilitate this meeting and who will also welcome you. She's a wonderful meeting holder, holder of community. So welcome, Annette.
Thank you, Lynn. Just want to say welcome to everybody. Happy Monday morning if you're on the East Coast, and happy afternoon if you're somewhere else, or evening in the rest of the world. And I don't have much to say. Be happy to help you get your questions answered later in the session. And without further ado, I'll pass it on to Anna.
So I'm on?
You are.
Okay, well, I'm just going to put up my, if I can find it now. Here it is. Can you see this? I shared a screen. Can everybody see it?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I've got 2 metaphors up. One of them is by Robert Burns, and the other one is by our own Jean Gendlin. And metaphors are the topic of today. So I just want to, I'm going to refer back to these later, but I just want you to know my love is like the melody that's sweetly played in tune from Robert Burns, and George Washington is an elephant, which is from, it's actually in, I think it's in a process model. It certainly is used in TAE things, but okay. I should have put APM there instead of TAE. Okay, so I'm going to unshare now. And I want to talk a little bit about metaphors. You probably remember learning about metaphors maybe in your freshman literature class or something like that. But actually, you've been using metaphors from when you first began to talk. If your mother kept a baby book and wrote down all the cute things you said when you said them, a lot of those cute things were metaphors. And I've brought 3 childhood metaphors that I experienced as an adult that children said. One of them is a writer friend of mine got a book title from what her daughter said. She said, "Come outside, Mommy, and smell the blue sky." And so the title of the book was Smell the Blue Sky. I taught for a while in my younger years at an African-American college. And the child of one of the teachers there said to me, I'm chocolate and you're vanilla. And because I was one of the few white people she met. So that was her thing. And then the last one I want to share is my nephew grew up in an all-white suburb some 40 years ago. And he was shopping with his mother and he saw the first Black person he'd ever seen in his life. And he said, "Look, Mommy, his lights turned off." And she, being a smart woman, decided from then on she was going to take him outside of their community when they went to the park so he could play with children of many colors and backgrounds. So, so we start out using metaphors at a very, very early age. Metaphors are important. I think that they're essential to our process, as essential as breathing. They come along with bodies. I think it's just built into us. And we might not even be able to think or speak without them. It's quite possible. And they're really important because they're how we understand our world and ourselves in relationship to it. Just the simplest greeting that we have, how are you? And the person might say fine, and then I'll say, yeah, but really, how are you? And the person will pause, and then they might say something, well, my stomach is all in knots. Or they might say, I feel as light as a feather, as happy as a lark. Or they might say, I'm so sleepy. It feels as if there are dead weights attached to my eyelids. And they might, if they're really in a bad mood, well, you really want to know, I feel like a piece of, and I won't say the word, but you know the word I mean. So these are all, or they might say, I'm carrying the whole weight of the world on my shoulders. These are all metaphors. And we say them without even thinking, but they say so much more than saying, I'm just tired or I'm not feeling good. They give you a flavor and a reality and intensity to what you're saying. When we are focusing is really mostly a practice of sitting quietly and finding a metaphor that matches what we're feeling inside. If you think about it, let me check. Oh, it feels heavy, or it feels light, or it feels dizzy, like I'm whirling around inside. Those are all metaphorical ways of explaining what's going on for us. So metaphors are really key, especially to us as focusers. And we even have a special word for it in the focusing word. We call it a crossing. George Washington is an elephant is a crossing. Two different things. Say they are the same. And what does that bring up for you? So I think that is all I really want to say at a start. And so I'm going to do, what we're going to do next is, let me just get my papers here, is we're going to do I'm going to do a screen share and put up a writing prompt. You're going to write for, I think I only need you to write a few words. Your writing time should mostly be sitting and going inside with the writing prompt and sitting and finding the answer to a simple question and then write, I don't know, 3 or 4 or 5 sentences, no more needed. So this is as much sitting with your answer to the question situation as it is a writing one. And I'm going to put the prompt up now. And so I hope you've got your writing materials handy, but I would say put them down. Don't pick them up yet. Hold your hands in your lap or something to keep you from doing that. I'm going to share again. And I hope somebody besides me is going to be doing the timing. Is that right?
We can.
Okay. Here, I need to move my pictures of you so I can find run this down. Here is a writing prompt. And we're going with Burns, Robert Burns metaphor. What I want you to do is think of somebody that you love. It could be a child, it could be a friend, it could be somebody who's no longer with us. And ask yourself, it could be anybody in your life or important to your life, and ask yourself, how is that person like a melody? I want you to take a moment to feel how you know this person and how you carry that knowing of that person in your body. Sit with it quietly and then write a few sentences about how that person is like a melody. And you could say, and I'll give you a couple of examples of what I wrote so you won't be totally lost. But you could pick a kind of music or a singer, a specific singer, or an instrument, any kind of musical metaphor. And I've got a couple of examples that are quite different. So I wrote, "My love makes me think of a scat by Ella Fitzgerald. All energy and smooth as silk, soft as a whisper, and so deep, so full of meaning that words just get in the way." So that's one person I was trying to think, and it just came to me, Ella Fitzgerald. That's just doing a scat. Do you all know what a scat is? It's jazz when they don't use words. Da 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 boo 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 ga da dee da. You know, that kind of thing. No, I'm not a scatter, but okay. Another one, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you. Well, here anyway, just another one I did for a different person. Okay, this one is completely different. It's kind of simple, homespun, straightforward, pure, very soothing, kind of like comfort food or a breath of fresh air coming off the prairie. I can almost hear the words, home, home on the range. This person reminded me of that worldwide known song that was written in Kansas. So, I'm going to be quiet now. You're going to start your first sit with it. And what I'm going to do is we're going to give you 6 minutes to sit and then write a few sentences or phrases that describe the kind of music that that person brings for you. Then we're going to stop. And I am going to ask you to pick a second, a completely different person, and do the same exercise over again with that second person. And I'll leave the prompt on the screen here so you can see it. Are there any questions before we start?
I think we're ready.
Okay, it's a simple concept, so let's see what comes out of it. Okay, so I'm just going to ask you to put down your writing material again and start the same exercise with a second person. And you've got another 6 minutes for that. And we'll start that timing now. And remember, sit with it before you pick up your writing tools.
Okay, I think it's time, Anna.
Okay. Well, now I'd like you to go into small groups. And you can share, if you like, what you've written. In my writing classes, nobody is obliged to share. It's totally voluntary, so I don't want people to feel that obliged to share. But you might share about the process, how you found the process if you don't feel comfortable sharing what you actually wrote. Either way, and then just discuss among the 3 or 4 of you what this was like for you. You might look at it from the perspective of a writer or from the perspective of a focuser, or if you work with groups of people, how you might use something like this in a group, those things. And we can then share, we'll come back and share. And let's see, why don't we give ourselves 15 minutes? Does that sound like a good enough time? 20 minutes? What do you think?
How about 20 minutes?
Okay.
And I know that sometimes people have to leave at 9, but you almost have an opportunity to be in a breakout room if you want to be. But if you really need to leave, I guess this is a time so Christine can make the groups intact. But we again, we hope that you're able to stay.
And if you only have the first 15 minutes of the group, if there's 4 people in the group, leaving won't be that disruptive.
Mm-hmm.
Just take your turn first in the group.
Okay, so 20 minutes in groups of 3, Anna?
Sounds perfect.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Hey.
So I guess I would like to hear how this has been for you. We have what, about 20 more minutes?
About a half hour.
Oh yeah, right. A half hour. Great. Oh, that's good. So we have a lot of time. Oh, great. What happened for you in your groups? Anybody want to share?
So either you can raise your hand or just unmute yourself and speak.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Somebody asked, can you tell us about your writing classes? I do a writing class on coronaplaza.life twice a month. It's the 2nd and 4th Tuesdays at noon Pacific time. So that would be at 3 o'clock on the East Coast, and at another 9 o'clock, 9 or 10 o'clock in Europe. And it's usually a writing prompt and then a discussion. It's based on what I used as journal assignments at the Confidence Clinic, the program that I worked at for many years.
So they can get more info at coronaplaza.life. I want to make sure we give time for people to share their experience.
Well, maybe I can ask a question. How was it for you writing the metaphors? What did it feel like? Was it worth doing? Did it feel like it was helpful in some way? Give me some feedback. How's that?
Well, I could say I really liked it. And one of the things that I feel now is a joy about my husband, and I can't wait to share with him what I came up with about him. It's going to be fun. Yeah. And it gives me an idea, as I go around life now, I will think more about metaphors. Yeah, living them.
Great. And in fact, if you would like to share it with this group, if you want to, anybody who wants to share what they wrote, that would be lovely in the larger group. And if you don't want to, of course, that's fine.
Well, I think on that point, I like to say as a feedback, for me, the writing was difficult. And I was actually thinking I'm just going to skip out because the thought of sharing what I wrote didn't feel very pleasant. And so your instruction that if we don't want to share the writing, share about the process was very helpful.
Oh,
And otherwise, I wouldn't have stayed on.
okay.
And then starting out that way, sharing about the process and sharing, it just was a really good group process. And it really opened up a lot for me. And it was really very, I think, very rich what we got from each other and how we, I don't know, played off each other's sounds. So thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. And thank you for sharing that.
This is Lynn. We had some technical difficulties because one of our people, her screen froze. But because the other person, Sharon, shared that Mozart said that the music is between the sounds. So it was like we were playing out the metaphor in our group. And there was something so totally elegant about the way we all connected with each other. And because even though she was frozen, she was able to write. And so I was able to read what she wrote, and she could hear us. So it was a kind of we really made our own music because we had silence, we had interruption, we had writing, we had the visual, we had the auditory. It was it really was a completely interesting blend of experiences. And I think the silences actually made it very rich and very warm between us. We're working so hard to stay connected.
How wonderfully you were so creative in addressing the problem. You didn't let it stop you. That's wonderful. And you may note that in music, the silence between the notes is as important a part of the music as the sounds.
Well, Sharon, who was part of it, said that's what Mozart said as a quote. So we were using it very, very elegantly and quite often.
Oh, that's wonderful.
It was great. So thank you. That was a wonderful prompt.
And there's something else you touched on that I'd just like to underline a little bit, which is that using metaphors deepens your communication. Because in very few words, you can say a whole bunch. And Julia, if you don't mind if I use you as an example, when Julia shared what she wrote about her love, when she was through, I had such a vivid sense of who he was and what he was like and what their relationship was like. And it was just, it was like she'd written a whole dissertation on their relationship and she'd done it in just a few short sentences. And metaphors do that. They communicate really richly and deeply and wholly. It's like a whole body experience of whatever that person is writing about. It's really wonderful. Thank you, Lynn, for sharing.
My pleasure.
I have some things I'd like to say about metaphors, but I'd rather you said them instead of me. So I'm going to wait a little longer here.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
just,
yeah.
someone's talking. So I will be quiet.
Oh. You have something to say, and does somebody else have something to say? Was it Ayana? Were you wanting to say, share something, or are you
Oh.
unmuted?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I just went out and came back because I lost my Zoom connection. Yeah, so yeah, I did appreciate my friend who I love and see her deepness, what a deep person she is. And so I guess I can see her as a bird flying high and, you know, and flying low and being rooted in the earth. So I guess that would be a deep ocean. And it's really glad, I'm really glad to see Anna doing this. And I have known Anna since my college days. So, you know, she is a person who has come into my life at different times of my life. And I really appreciate her. And I was glad to be here.
I was glad to see you here, Ayana. And I like that soaring high and flying low image that you shared with us. It's beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. I love the clarity of your prompt, you know, and how you introduce this with a lot of clarity there. So thank you.
I think for me, what as a takeaway from this, it took me to really feeling more into vibrations, temperature, and also I think feeling color more in the body. And because I think at first the thought about music kind of like, I don't want to describe a person as, and then it was more like the quality like in a string quartet of a cello being foreground and background and sort of moving, being foreground, background. But then it was more the quality of the sound, of the temperature and the color of it. So I never got to a phrase that I would share as writing, but I think just almost like a more capacity of focusing to really sense, I think, temperature and color in the body.
Well, you may not have written it, but you have spoken it very beautifully right now. And vividly. And I just love the concept of the string quartet because there's so much richness in that kind of a sound. It's beautiful. Thank you.
No, and it was also interesting because the second time I took a person who I barely know, and somehow it was almost the same color.
So it may be that person reminds you of the other one or has a quality that is similar to the others, and that's why you thought of them, perhaps.
More like as a vibration,
Mhm.
like a color vibration.
Right. Very interesting. Okay, one thing I would just like to say, I used a lot of writing exercises at the Confidence Clinic with the women that I worked with there. Short writing exercises, because for some of them writing was very difficult. And I let them draw pictures if writing was difficult, too difficult. But what I want to say is that when I was working with a group of somewhere between 20 and 30 women, and we were together 5 days a week from 9 in the morning until 4 in the afternoon. So that was a lot of time together, and it was important to build a group cohesiveness. So if you're ever working in situations with a group, the sharing process that we've just been doing here and that you did in your small groups is a kind of glue. It's a way of getting to know people quickly and intimately, without having to share specific facts about your life necessarily, but sharing the depth of the emotional content of your life and it really helps when a group has that kind of level of sharing within the group structure. So that helps get people to connect with each other individually, but individually in the context of that specific group. And so it strengthens both the individual ties and the group ties. So it's a very powerful tool in building group cohesiveness. What we're doing right now is actually modeling how you might use or follow up an exercise like this in working with a group of people. And Ina, it seemed to me you had something you wanted to say earlier, and I want to just check in with you.
Okie dokie. I don't know. It's been very rich. So, but also very, I've had a lot of real life disturbances during this 8:15 to 9:45 in New York City time is pretty awkward most weeks, but it's been so rich. The breakout room was, wow. So it's not that I want to share what came to me. I usually resist prompts and so forth, but I did take the opportunity to felt sense each time off your prompt, and it was good. It was good, but the richest was the breakout room, kind of just really underlining what you just said and offered that it's
Yes.
a way of just like metaphor is this. I can't even imagine language without it. It almost feels like it's such an essential, it's the real verb in language, let's say, is this felt sensing activity. And of course, it's the essence of focusing. It's, I don't know, it's been very deep, this whole thing. But yeah, to build intimacy without revealing intimate details. It's amazing.
Yes, it is very powerful. Thank you for saying that. That's really good. Let me just see, there's some other things that I might like to touch on.
And I have a question for you.
Yes.
Because I love this idea of bringing a group together, right? And I often have the opportunity of doing that. So say there are 6 of us sitting together, but a meeting for something else, totally different. How would I do this? Would I just ask people to come up with a metaphor of what their life is like today, or?
Okay, I've got a couple of suggestions for that. First of all, it doesn't have to be music. It could be trees, it could be animals, it could be anything. But I like to begin a meeting, especially, and I've done this with a meeting full of bureaucrats and social workers and all kinds of people who are, used to having meetings and getting them done and getting right to the point or whatever. And I do a weather metaphor. I ask people to sit quietly, and some of you may be familiar with this one, but I ask them to sit quietly with their day up to this point. And if it's in the afternoon, it may have been a long day, or if it's a group like this, for me, I mean, this is my day so far, because it's still early in the morning. It's only 6:30 now. But for some of you have had a long day, and I just sit with how that day is. Again, I don't pick up your writing materials at first. Just sit with how your day has been from the time you got up until this moment. And think of it as if it were a weather report. Would it be Partly cloudy, sunny skies, storms on the horizon, scattered showers. What would it be? And then again, sometimes I have people draw a picture depending on the group or write just a paragraph describing the weather and not describing the incidences of their day, but just the weather. So don't say you went shopping and somebody yelled at you, but say, you know, you had a sudden hailstorm or whatever. And what that does is lovely because then they can share, and that does the group bonding thing. But it's also, it allows them to let go of their day. It allows them to sort of take that day, look at it, accept it, put it into a metaphor, and then they can put it aside and give their whole attention to the meeting that is going forward.
Oh, good. Thank you.
So it's really great, and it works with people who are not at all comfortable with their bodies or anything like that, and it gets them to but it gets them in their bodies, and it gets them it helps them let go of all that has happened. That, I mean, and especially if it's been a difficult day, it's really very useful for them to be able to let go of that so they can fully give their attention to what you're going to do in your meeting. And it makes the group stronger. The sharing makes the group stronger as it goes about doing whatever it is meeting to do.
Oh, thank you. Great ideas. Yeah.
I love it because you could use it with all, Lynn again, you can use it with all ages. I mean, it's absolutely a age-proof way of working, and people like it. I love the fact that it brings people right into the room and focusing it, you know, right there. It makes you completely present.
And that's a big transition from your day to sitting around a table at a meeting, and this helps that transition. Yeah.
I think that's really exquisite. I'm going to borrow it, steal it.
Well, that's why I'm sharing it. I hope you will. Another thing I just want to mention, this is also, it's useful in teaching focusing, and those of us who, if any of you have seen the guest house version of focusing, that's a metaphor. People in community wellness focusing use that. They also use the brittle twig and the green twig to show resilience. And that's a metaphor. And of course, Anne Weiser's treasure maps and all of the whole thing about tangles, those are all metaphors as well. So that metaphors are widely used in the focusing community as a teaching tool. And then as a writer, well, I write novels, and think how richer my descriptions of my characters are when I start with metaphors or with how I'm feeling that character in my body, and then come up with metaphors. For example, if I'm writing about somebody like the scat, the jazz scat, Ella Fitzgerald person that I was talking about, I can go back to that. I can have some other character think of her that way, but I can also put that smooth sort of edginess of the scat into the person's dialogue, into the way they talk, or put it into body movements, and use that to deepen the character, and give the reader a look at the character on a more intimate level than I can if I'm just saying, you know, she was restless, or she was, you know, it gets so much deeper in terms of, and it makes my writing more poetic occasionally, which I like. I'm no Toni Morrison. Oh, I love the way that woman writes, but at least it makes for richer writing and engages the reader more deeply than just saying, well, you know, she's tall and she's got blue eyes and blonde hair. Yeah, okay. And about 1,000 other people. That doesn't tell me anything. So let's see if there's any other things here I wanted. Oh, action steps. Did I talk about action steps here or just in the small group? Metaphors can go to action steps. The examples that I gave about my nephew's mother taking him into new neighborhoods after the child said his light is off. And so that immediately led her to look for opportunities to introduce her child to a multiple of cultures and experiences. The little child who told me that she was chocolate and I was vanilla allowed, and that was a little bit like, you know, she was sort of like, I'm chocolate, you're only vanilla. You know, it was a little bit like that, you know, and I said to her, isn't that wonderful, because I love both flavors. And it was just a way to and she sort of like relaxed a little bit. And then it was more, you know, she was sort of questioning before, and then she felt, oh, yeah, I like both flavors too. It's kind of a cool thing. And then the George Washington is an elephant thing. I believe Junlin talks about how George Washington was a giant. He was great because he stayed above political squabbles. He was able to do politics without getting sucked into the action of the factions that were fighting against each other. And so that what happened is that I became active in the League of Women Voters, which is a nonpartisan political organization that grew from actually the suffragist movement that got women the right to vote. And they had all these women voters who needed to learn about politics. And so they became clearly nonpartisan and just doing research and presenting the actual facts, the situation, the problem, the solutions proposed, so that women voters could become educated and vote wisely. So those are all action steps that came directly from metaphors. So it's metaphors, I think, motivate, I guess I would say. And they often point to ways forward you might not have thought of. So I'm going to be quiet again. I've said all I had to say, I think, but maybe someone will say something that will bring up a new point, and I'd be delighted.
I'm Katerina from the West Coast, just up the road from Anna. I loved it to sense into my students from the class that I had this past week, 4 hours a day for 5 days in a row. And it allowed me to form a resonance with their learning, my teaching, how the whole course came together, because it's centered so specifically on one person, the melody for that person. It was just wonderful, Anna, and something that I plan to do each week. Give a bit of time. And how did that resonate? Do you know what I mean?
I do. And I'm pleased that you'll be able to use this.
Yeah, and the difference is the distinctions between the kind of music, for one, a Beethoven sonata with the piano and its notes carrying the way that the student presented. They did a practicum this week. And the other was a song from Getting to Know You, Getting to Know All About You. So the different genre, the classical music and the the colorful stage. So how each can be so unique. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing, Katerina. I just have this image of you in your class now, getting to know one another now on a new level. Oh.
I know we have 5 minutes left. And Melinda, do we have any housekeeping that we need to use the time for? And there's a question in the chat about the March conference. I don't know if anybody has any information about that.
I guess if it's about the International Focusing Conference, it would be on the Focusing Institute website. So I know that next week Christine will be holding the space for us. So we have 2 more Mondays of writing programs. And I'm trying to think, I don't think we have anything else, and certainly we don't need to stay longer, but I always like to I just want to also always encourage those who haven't spoken that we really do invite new voices to share if you'd like to. But Anna, you want to say something?
I just would like to say quickly, if you're interested in reading any of my books, you can find me on Amazon.com. They're on Kindle. 2 of them are in print, but the rest are all on Kindle. And you just look up by my name, Anna Willman, which is right there on the bottom of my screen. And you can find the books that I have. They're all cheap, $2.99 on Kindle. So, except, well, there's also one about the Confidence Clinic, which is not a novel, but a nonfiction book about my experiences there. And that one is more. It's a bigger book. It costs more, but anyway, I just wanted to throw that out if you're interested.
And again, Anna, thank you for getting up. Well, I know you're an early riser, but thank you for being on so early in the morning. We really appreciate this. It was really a very rich offering for us this morning. And I just want to thank you. And I want to wish everyone a good week. And we'll see you hopefully next week. And certainly feel free to go to coronaplaza.life to see so many other programs.